It's a most wonderful time of the year. It really isn't. I've got to be honest. I'm not going to be a killjoy in any way, shape or form. So this is actually nothing to do with the festivities. But the absolute chaos out there. I really should have gone out a lot earlier this morning. Absolutely. I hold my hands up to that. My general rule of thumb is on a weekend, if you're going to go shopping, you go and you avoid between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. That's when everybody goes shopping. Any time before and any time after, you're like as not going to have a bit of a quieter time of it. So I had a mad manic sort of finish off of like the sort of like spring cleaning ready for the holiday sort of thing this morning. I even took down the heavy bag. Oh, that's a sad thing indeed, but I need the room and I need the space, so I had to come down in my bedroom. I'm quite disappointed about that, but I've donated it. I've donated it at the skip, which basically means you put it in the skip, the people at work, they go, oh, that's pretty much awesome, and then they take it and they're probably going to give it to the Shildon Boxing Club or something like that. You just know they will. They always kind of like go through anything, and anything that looks absolutely immaculate, they take out and they donate or they keep or whatever. Either way, somebody's going to get more out of use of it than I can right now. I digress. Aside from that, the whole thing is that it's just chaos. Like, is it me? Or do people generally know that there's going to be a particular festivity on a particular day of the year? So instead of like leaving it all till the last couple of days before that particular day of festivities, have you not got the whole year? I mean, of course you want to get your fresh food. I mean, I get my fresh veggies every Monday. Roast me veggies up for Monday and Tuesday, and that's me dinners for those 2 days. Absolutely lovely. When I looked at the supermarket today, I was like, yeah, okay. I'm going to go to the little private shop instead, the little private stall that's on the side of the road, which sounds awful, but it's actually the farmers. They kind of like do these crates of veggies, and they kind of like, there's a lay-by. They sell just off the lay-by. They've got a little stall there. And yeah, so I've gone off on a complete tangent. But the fact is, I knew it was going to be busy, and I really wasn't in the mood for it. So I thought, no, I'll do what I need to do, get rid of this junk, bush, that's done, get what I need. I only need basic veggies, that's no problem. Come back home, leave them to it. And then what's strange is, I know this from when I used to work in retail, after midday on Christmas Eve, so basically before midday, even at 7 o'clock, they're baying at the doors to be opened. I mean, this is when I was back in college, so you're going back a good couple of decades, you know. But they're baying at the doors, scratching at the doors to be opened early. They've got to be let in. Oh my God, they've got to be there at 7 o'clock. Yeah, they've got all the trolleys there, all vying to be the first ones in, as if it really matters. And then at 12 o'clock, ghost town. I don't get it. Anyway, my lovely beans. Sorry about that ranty, waffly, like whiffly thing today. Much apologies, but I think I'm justified. Today. So, how are you doing? How are things going? What has been your most interesting experience that you've had so far in this festive period that you think? Have you got anything that's kind of like similar? Or have you got another little story that you'd like to tell us? Please leave a little comment or send me a little email. You know how it is. I'd love to hear from you. You know I do, because, well, I do. Don't get out much. And this tells you why. Just so many people, I can't even cope. But yes, big shout out to the lovely people at the skip who help out though, because they're really nice. Okie dokie. Here comes the sun. Chapter 13. The sky is very high here. In most places, the sky is just, well, high. A sort of blue tent that keeps the stars out and the air in. But here, it's different. Narrators know it really is different. I mean, here in the northeast of England, we've got beautiful, big, wide open skies and very little, like, light pollution, but it's there in the little village where I'm in, you know. But you go out to Kielder and it's bright and sparkly. You go to New Hampshire, my goodness gracious, it's like canopy of stars just glittering. Oh, it's so pretty. I digress. Here, it's different. Here, it's so high above sea level that the existence of the ground is little more than an unsubstantiated rumour. There is also a castle. A big, frilly, no expense spared Ludwig of Bavaria special, and it's bobbing and floating about like a balloon that's been on a sherry on an empty stomach, with nothing holding it up apart from the thought of the quite appalling effect it would have on the ground if it ever stopped floating. When it comes to a bare-knuckle fight between gravity and social conscience, gravity loses. As you approach, picking your way cautiously through the thermals and taking care not to tread on the heads of any high-flying birds, you can hear snatches of a strange and bewildering noise wafted at you by the semi-feral winds that hide out in the major altitudes. From this distance, and bearing in mind the uncanny distortions of wind and the Doppler effect, you could almost believe that you were listening to several thousand people whistling. Flat. Off-key, the disjointed scraps of a half-familiar tune. Welcome to the castle in the air, headquarters of the Department of Omens and Auspices. The men standing in inch-perfect rows in the courtyard are trainee messengers. Once they graduate, they will spend their working lives delivering dreams, uncanny flashbacks, moments of déjà vu, and other similar communications. At the moment, they are being taught the extremely tricky art of making the unique noise known as the postman's whistle. Now, supposing you look very carefully, you'll notice that one small figure in the departmental blue and gold uniform whose hair is rather longer than the rest. If you can somehow force your ears to blot out the general cacophony, you'll notice this one individual is defiantly whistling, in tune, and without sudden disconcerting pauses, a tune which is unmistakably Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Guess who? You mustn't think of it in those terms, Ganga had said, as they trudged up the castle's drive. That's negative. Really, Jane replied. She would have expressed herself more fully, but the gradient was steep, and her knees were beginning to feel as if some joker had whipped the sinews out of them while she wasn't looking. Believe me, Ganga said, even if we were trying to keep you out of the way for a while, which we aren't, we wouldn't do it by putting you in the messenger service. It's far too high profile for that. Hi, said Jane, breathlessly sardonic, try it for yourself. Profile? Running errands. Delivering messages. Yeah. Ganga stopped for a moment, ran his finger round the inside of the button-down collar of his Abercrombie and Fitch pink shirt and breathed in. Hardly hidden away in some out-of-the-way back office, is it? Jane wiped sweat out of her eyes with her thumb and forefinger. Not exactly challenging, though. Not precisely demanding the highest levels of executive performance. I thought you said I was a high flyer. Ganga started to look down, then checked himself quickly. You want to go any higher than this, you can find your own way. Jane kept her face straight. Just. You're not afraid of heights, are you? She said. I'm bloody terrified of heights, Ganga replied. Think about it, will you? My natural environment isn't high up on the top of things. In fact, it's the exact opposite. I get vertigo standing on thick pile carpet sometimes. And, he added, if you think that's so terribly amusing, we'll pay a visit to my departmental HQ one of these days, and we'll see how you like that. Jane made a contrite sort of breathless gasping noise, and they continued their climb in silence, or at least without words, for a while. Eventually, Jane bit her lip. Sorry, she said, and I do appreciate you coming along to introduce me. Thanks. Ganga smiled. Think nothing of it, he said. That's fine. I'm sorry? I said that's fine. I'm sorry? Jane shouted back. I can't hear you for the blood pumping in my ears. It's not important. Sorry. I said it's nothing. Are we there yet? Ganga opened his mouth, thought better of it, and nodded. In front of them, its drawbridge lowered over nothing at all and resting on even less, was the gatehouse of the castle in the air. Over the keystone of the arch there was a board of wood, Wind at barometric pressure had long since scoured it of varnish, but still faintly visible were the words, "The Laurels," painted in faded white. Jane raised an eyebrow. "We tried calling it that for a while," Ganga explained, "but it never seemed to catch on somehow. You wait there while I knock." He advanced up to the massive gate and lifted the knocker, using... I'm so sorry. I'm thinking of the one in the labyrinth, not the two-point. Not the slang, rather. I digress. Using both hands and putting his back into it, he managed to raise it a full inch before he had to let go. "It's not a real knocker, you see," he said, rubbing his arms gingerly. "Or at least it's real, but it's an ideal knocker. You know, the way knockers should be in an... I can't even do this. Be in an ideal universe. And in an ideal universe, people take a lot more exercise than we do. So, Ganga went on, I guess we'll have to do the next best thing." He stooped slightly and walked down under the gate. Jane followed, her belief not so much suspended as dangling by a thread. "Mind how you go from now on?" Ganga called out to her as they emerged into the outer yard. "The whole of this place is an excluded liability zone." Jane blinked. "Excuse me," she said. "Excluded liability zone," Ganga repeated. "Absolutely necessary in view of the sort of work they do here. You see, if we could be held accountable for any of the information that we pass on from here, in perfectly good faith, you understand, with being caught so fast our feet wouldn't touch. Talking of which, look out for tripwires." "Tripwires?" Ganga nodded. "And dogs, of course. It's part of the training program, you see." "Dogs I can understand," Jane said, thinking of Portsman again. "But why tripwires?" "We deliver supernatural promptings to some of the best offended people in the cosmos," Ganga replied, with a hint of pride. "You know, this sort of thing. Merchant princes who won't clinch a deal unless they get an okay from their astrologer. Lunatic third-world dictators who take their policy guidelines from the spirits of their ancestors. Identical twin brothers of Latin American drug barons. When you're on a job like that, tripwires come as light relief, and the worst part of it is," Ganga continued, grinning, "you have to keep whistling. It's the code, you see. Whistling, scattering rubber bands everywhere, and never turning up with a recorded delivery unless you're sure the recipient is out. Narrators know, do you know what ours do? I mean, my posties, they have improved significantly in recent times. But what they used to do before, if it was raining and you had a parcel due, right, they'd write out all the little red cards and then they'd go and post them. They wouldn't even bother trying to send the parcels at all. And I was like, I caught him doing it one day. And I shouted out, and I was like, you know, you just put this through my door. Where's your parcel? He's like, I've put it in the van. I said, where's the van? He said, oh, it's gone now. I'm like, I've got it on my camera. And he was like, I'm like, yeah. I know your tricks. Hey. And now they've been sold, so it's only going to get bloody worse. I remember the good days of Royal Mail. I miss it so much. And that was the days of the rubber bands, mind you. Right. Whistling, scattering rubber bands everywhere, and never turning up with a recorded delivery unless you're sure the recipient is out. It's a point of honour. They're very strict about it. Directly under their feet, the sun chugged past, 20 minutes ahead of schedule. Was it Jane's imagination, or did the pilot wave? Ganga stopped and straightened his tie. Right, he said, we're here. Now then, I have a strange feeling you're going to do all right here. Funny you should mention that, Jane replied. So have I. Naturally, Ganga said. Think about it. Bjorn hesitated. Some hard things have been said about him recently, so the record should be set straight. He had his feelings, true, but when it came to balls, he had more of them than Dunlop and Slazenger put together. Equipped with an axe, a homemade grappling hook, and great-grandmama's washing line, he was getting ready to burgle the portals of the sunset. He reminded himself to stay cool, but it wasn't really necessary. Slowly and methodically, he checked his equipment, pulled his mask, one of old Gretchen's black leg warmers with 2 eye holes cut in it, over his face, and crept forwards. About here, somewhere, there should be an invisible electric fence. He knew all about the fence. A long time ago, when he was working on security, he and Thick Mick and Kevin the Pisser had the job of installing it one wet Friday afternoon. As he had anticipated, it did not detain him long. The searchlights mounted on number 3 and number 4 observation towers would have been a serious hazard if it were not for the fact that keeping the bearings oiled and in good repair had been the responsibility of old Nobby from maintenance ever since the fall of man. Nobby had long since worked out what axle grease was for. He ate it. So far, so good. There were 3 machine gun nests in number 5 observation tower, but what with the cutbacks and everything, the gunners were never issued with more than 5 rounds of ammunition each per year, and they were under strict orders to save those for the 21-gun salute for the Commandant's birthday. Given this limitation, the gunners, probably still Daft Terry and Gormless Dave, even after all these years, tended to spend their watch in the guardhouse playing endless games of dominoes, which somehow or other neither of them ever seemed to win. Sounds like the working men's club next door to me. Having penetrated as far as the outer perimeter fence, Bjorn stopped and assessed the task now facing him. This was where the fun started. For reasons which need not concern us here, nobody in the village had ever seen the need to spend good money on a pair of wire cutters. Bjorn, who had spent his meagre savings playing the speak your weight machines at the Wolfhound bus depot on his way out, was therefore going to have to improvise over it or through it. He decided against over it. If memory served him correctly, the posts holding it up were put in by some friends of his from the Department of Works, and so the chances of it bearing his weight were not that high. Through it, however, meant cutting a hole through the wire mesh without waking the entire guard. He frowned and checked through his rucksack for inspiration. Having rejected the spare pair of underpants, the roll of extra strong mitts, the broken watch and the July 1985 edition of Street Bike, he was left with a tin opener, a leaky felt tip pen and a Zambian army knife. The latter item had one overwhelming advantage over its Swiss rival, which outweighed its various drawbacks in Bjorn's estimation. It was given away free with litre cans of lawnmower gearbox oil. He took it out of the rucksack and fumbled for the saw blade attachment. Now, it says something about the quality of departmental fencing wire that Bjorn was through and out the other side in 3 minutes flat. For the record, when the Zambian army wants a fence cut, they don't hang around breaking their fingernails trying to get the saw blade out. They get on the radio for a squadron of MIGs. Or MiGs. According to the Periphery Fences design specification, there are 17 acres of minefield between the inner and outer perimeter fences. According to the latest Security Department stock audit, the department possesses 5 mines, at least 3 of which were in working order when last inspected. Bjorn gritted his teeth and he ran for it. There are times in a man's life when he just has to ride his luck. Which brought him, breathless but unscathed, to the foot of the inner perimeter fence. Now, this was rather more of a challenge, since it hadn't been installed by the department, but taken over without substantial modification from the chicken farm which had been on the site before the department requisitioned it. Here Bjorn suffered his first major setback. He tore the right leg of his trousers, about an inch below the knee.
"The thing to remember in this job," said the Dream Master General, "is never to turn your back on small dogs."
Jane nodded. "Right," she said. "I think I can remember that, and all the rest of it," she added, such as finding the recipient, climbing in through locked and barred windows, all that sort of stuff. "I suppose That just comes by light of nature. The Dream Master gave her a disapproving look.
All right, Miss Clever, he said. We'll come on to the various procedures in due course. We can't run before we can walk, you know. I was just telling you for your own good. You look out for small dogs.
I always have, Jane replied, with feeling, especially when sitting down in her strange house. Look, I don't mean to sound cocky. It's just that I want to get on with it. The practical side, I mean. The Dream Master nodded.
All in good time, he said. Now, first, you'll do your basic training. That's affecting entry, recipient identification drill, and elementary brain infiltration. That's the easy part. The tricky part, the Dream Master went on, is getting out again afterwards.
Behind the rail of number 9 observation tower, Trooper 2314 Star Spear identified his target and took careful aim. He sighted along the broad barrel, checked that his feet were braced and his arm was high and rigid, breathed deeply in and smoothly out and...
Unlucky, observed Trooper 8345 Moonblade. He walked over to the board, pulled out the darts and placed his feet on the chalk line. 6 for game, he remarked confidently. At the bottom of the tower, Bjorn paused and unwound 10 feet of washing line from inside his anorak. It was a long time since he'd done anything like this. In fact, the most recent occasion he could remember was when it was his turn to raid the canteen at Destiny for digestive biscuits. But there are some things you just do not forget. He flexed his fingers and deftly attached the grappling hook to the line with 3 superimposed granny knots. Far above his head, and below his feet too for that matter, but let's not confuse the issue, the stars twinkled. A stray photon or so glanced harmlessly off the teens of the hook as he whirled it 3 times around his head and let fly. There are, of course, other things that you do forget, and the art of throwing grappling hooks is one of them. After a few minutes of serious thought, Bjorn picked himself up, rubbed the back of his head vigorously, and set about rewinding the rope around his forearm in long, slack loops. 2 for game, said Trooper 8345 Moonblade grimly. He steadied himself, threw his weight forward onto the front foot in the approved manner and watched incredulously as a big black hook appeared over the rail of the tower, buried one of its talons into the dartboard, and whisked it off the wall and away into darkness. Far below, he could just hear a soft thud, followed by a faint cry. I think we'll have to call that a draw, Dave, said Trooper 2314 Star Spear, just managing to force the words out of his mouth before the whoop of triumphant relief beat him to it. 7 cruisers had been riding on the outcome, and he had been on double one for the last 6 throws. Some bastard nicked our dartboard, replied Trooper 8345 Moonblade furiously. Did you see that, Nave? Some bastard just... There was a whooshing sound, and the hook reappeared, hovered in the air for, say, a 2/50th of a second, and fell on to the rail. As it retreated, one of the teens caught and held firm. I think there's something in the rules about it, persevered Trooper 2314 Star Spear. I think what it actually says is if the dartboard gets eaten by a passing column of soldier ants, but it's the same thing, really. Knave, whispered his colleagues urgently. Is someone climbing up the tower? They looked at each other. We're being invaded, Dave, said Trooper 2314 Star Spear. Look, don't we have to do something, or... Trooper 8345 Moonblade gave him a long stare. Yeah, he said. Sure we do. We report it. Below them they could hear grunts and a soft oath, just as might be made, for example, by a large man climbing painfully up a thin nylon rope without wearing the proper and suitable gloves. Report it, repeated Trooper 2314 Star Spear. You sure? I mean, don't we just like... He pointed to his rifle, which was leaning against the corner of the far rail. His colleague shook his head vigorously, dislodging various items. "Don't talk bloody daft, Nev, for crying out loud," whispered Trooper 8345 Moonblade urgently. "For all we know, if we start anything, it could be a thing, diplomatic implement. We could really be in trouble. Just hold your water, wait until they've gone, and then report it, right?" But, inside Trooper 2314 Starspear's head, everyday civilian logic battled with military logic.
"But what if they, attack us, Dave?"
Trooper 8345 Moonblade stared past him to the rail, where a large hand was reaching up and scrabbling for a hold. He swallowed hard.
"Use your brain, son," he hissed. "We hide, right?"
Breathing hard, Bjorn hauled himself up to chin level, swung a leg over the rail and flopped onto the floor of the tower. He lay for a few moments where he had fallen, catching his breath and swearing. Then he raised himself on his elbows and looked about him. Nobody here. Well, he'd guessed that from the fact that he'd got this far without being shot. The odd thing was, though, that the only thing that gave you the impression of the place being deserted was the actual absence of people. Everything else pointed to active occupation: the still warm mugs of tea, the glowing single-bar electric fire, the two rifles leaning against the rail, the forage caps hung on the radio aerial, the two pairs of shoes visible under the blackout curtain. Bjorn froze for a moment. Then he grinned. With an easy movement, he removed the grappling hook, transferred it to the opposite rail, and cast the line over the side. Then, with a slight wince and a muffled cry of pain, he hoisted himself over the side, slid down the line, and disappeared. A few moments later, the grappling hook wobbled, came loose, and disappeared after him. Then silence.
"Oh, look, here's a spare dartboard. That's lucky, isn't it?" "Dave, that's lucky, isn't it, Nev? Thinking about it, I believe you're right. Drawn game. Dave, mugs away, right?"
The curtain parted, and Trooper 8345 Moonblade emerged purposefully and hung the dartboard on the hook.
"Dave,"
said Trooper 2314 Starspear, "we better notify HQ like you said, before he has a chance to get to..."
"I said,"
repeated Trooper 8345 Moonblade meaningfully,
"mugs away."
He thrust the darts into his colleague's hands. "But Dave, there's only one of him, and if they start looking now, they'll find him, and..."
"He'll tell them that two of the department's crack special forces hid behind a curtain while he legged it over the side and got away."
Trooper 8345 gathered an ample armful of the front of his comrade's battle dress lapels and held them for a few significant seconds.
"Look,"
he said, letting go.
"You don't want to go round sending off daft messages like that. For a start, nobody would believe you." "They wouldn't."
Trooper 8345 Moonblade shook his head.
"Nah," he replied. "They'd just think you were making things up or imagining things as a result of the nasty blow to your head."
"But I haven't had a nasty blow to my head, Dave."
"These things can be arranged, Nev."
The two men exchanged non-verbal communication for 2, maybe 3 seconds. You can say a lot in 3 seconds if you don't have to bother with words. "Right," said Trooper 2314 Starspear, placing his left foot carefully alongside the talk line and taking the first dart in his right hand. "Doubles for in." There was, Jane decided, nothing to it. She turned and frowned at the window, which obligingly slid down and closed itself noiselessly. A sign with her left hand filled the room with a soft green light, imperceptible except through a messenger's specially treated contact lenses, but more than adequately bright to illuminate the simple operation of dream delivery. Jane pulled on her rubber gloves. Then, with the tip of her extended index finger, she gave the sleeper the very gentlest of prods, just on the point of his shoulder. He made a piggy noise and rolled onto his side, right ear uppermost. "Piece of cake," muttered Jane under her breath. "Too easy, surely." From the black canvas holster slung from her belt, she took the long black syringe, broke it open, and felt in her hip pocket for the sealed foil capsule which contained the dream. Using her teeth as she'd been taught, she tore the capsule open and tipped its contents into the chamber of the syringe. As they fell through the air into the chamber, the green light flashed momentarily on them. Jane nearly dropped the syringe. For training, naturally, they'd used blanks. This was the first time she'd seen a live dream, and she didn't like the look of it one bit. It lay in the chamber, flashing and squirming. She shuddered. In the green glow it resembled a transparent sausage, crammed full of little wriggling people and things, coloured lights, explosions and lightning changes of scene. Since the sausage was a mere 3 inches long and apparently contained a cast of thousands, the individual items were all rather too small to make out, but the impression they gave in the round, so to speak, was not pleasant at all. She wondered for a moment who the recipient was and what precisely was going to happen to him. None of her business, she decided firmly. With an easy motion, she clicked the syringe shut, flicked off the safety, and poised it carefully over the sleeper's ear. "Now then," she could feel her lips miming, "this isn't going to hurt." Quickly and firmly, she shot the plunger home and pulled the syringe smoothly away. The sleeper jerked slightly, moaned, and turned over onto his other side. Mission accomplished. Goody! The sleeper sat bolt upright. He was, Jane noticed for the first time, wearing a pair of dark purple satin pyjamas with a monogram on the pocket. Any nascent sympathy she might have had for the sleeper soaked quietly away between the floorboards of her mind. A quick glance reassured her he was still fast asleep, eyes tightly shut, breathing regular. "Hey," he said. Jane blinked. She hadn't been told anything about this. "What the hell do you mean, the Ides of March? It's the middle of September, and what are Ides anyway?" Jane replied. The sleeper slept on. "That's not an answer," he said. "Look, are you sure you delivered the right message to the right person here?" "I think so," Jane said. "I mean, this is 47 Newport Drive, Cardiff, isn't it?" The sleeper nodded. "Yes, it is, but this doesn't make sense. I'm expecting a highly important dream about Marshville Consolidated 9.5% convertible unsecured loan stock, and you come shoving my ears full of something about bewaring the Ides of March. Are you sure you haven't got your wires crossed somewhere?" "Hold on," Jane said. She was beginning to feel distinctly uncomfortable. "Let me just check what it says on the wrapper. Here we are," she went on, smoothing out the foil and peering at the script. "Jeremy Lloyd Perkins, 47 Newport Drive, Cardiff. That is you, isn't it?" The sleeper nodded slowly, like a puppet with rusty hinges on its neck. "Sure, that's me," he said, "but that's not my message. They must have got them muddled up at the depot." Jane wrinkled her nose. "You seem to know a lot about this," she said. "For a human being, I mean." "I've been a subscriber for 5 years," the sleeper replied, and Jane noticed how little his lips moved when he spoke. "I suppose I should be used to it by now. Still, it's a bit poor if you ask me. Only last month I was expecting a hot tip on the Beaconsfield International Rights issue, and all I got was some load of old tush about concealing my passage on the Lusitania. I don't want to be difficult, but it does make it hard to plan your long-term investment strategy when you can't rely on your supernatural advisors." Look at it from the other guy's point of view," continued the sleeper, swaying slightly backwards and forwards. "I mean, there's some poor sod somewhere who's going to have to face these Ides of March things armed with nothing more relevant than an insight into the FD 100 share index for 18th of September. He might get into serious trouble, you know." "I'm sorry," Jane said dispiritedly. "It's not my—" Without moving a millimetre, the sleeper managed to give a remarkably good impression of an impatient gesture. "That's all very well," he said, But it's not helping me any, and I don't suppose the unfortunate bastard who sailed on the Lusitania is going to be feeling much more cheerful about it either, even though, he added, he has the satisfaction of knowing that if only he hadn't drowned, he could have cleaned up something rotten in early trading.
Jane shrugged.
I'll mention it to them back at headquarters, she said.
But that's all I can do, I'm afraid.
Oh, no, you don't, the sleeper said, and his arm shot out and closed around Jane's wrist. You're not going anywhere until I get my dream, and don't try struggling or I'll wake up.
Jane felt her jaw drop, but she couldn't see any point in doing anything about it. When you're stuffed, you are stuffed. You're hurting my wrist, she pointed out.
The sleeper sneered. Tell me all about it when I'm awake, he replied.
Be fair, she pleaded. How am I supposed to get you your dream if you won't let me go?
The sleeper laughed through his nose. Not my problem, he said. I'm asleep, remember? I'm not in a position to do your thinking for you. Just get it sorted or there'll be trouble.
I see, Jane replied, and there was an edge to her voice you could have shaved with. In that case, I'll see what I can do. With her free hand, she fished out another foil packet, chosen at random, tore it open and held the capsule in her teeth while she drew the syringe. She loaded it, noting it with a certain grim satisfaction the nature of the contents. You want another dream, Mr. Lloyd Perkins, she said. Here you go. Quick as a flash, running for a bus, she drove the plunger home, and the transparent sausage sparked briefly as it travelled through 3 centimetres of air. The sleeper jerked violently and let go his grip, and Jane dived for the window, remembering just in time to scowl at it. It opened briskly, apologised as she sailed through it, and snapped shut after her. As she landed lightly on the balls of her feet, she could hear Mr. Lloyd Perkins screaming in his sleep. His own silly fault, she told herself as she switched on the ignition of her star cycle for trying to take it out on an innocent messenger. When she was safely clear of Newport Avenue, she pulled up under a street lamp and examined the empty foil packet. Nostradamus, it read, concerning the end of the world, and below that, in smaller type, best before 17th of February 2706. Well. Oh my goodness gracious. So, I must apologise for the fact that any time I try and do a Welsh accent, it's either Rod Gilbert, the comedian, or Ruth Maddox, who used to be in Heidi High. I could do the West Country, but Welsh is a completely different thing I want to be respectful of. But I adore Rod Gilbert as a comedian. He's doing okay. I think he was a bit poorly last time I heard. I digress. If you get a chance and you would like to watch one of the best comedy performances I have seen in all my days, and I'm a huge fan of stand-up comedy. I love stand-up comedy. But this is one of the best rants I have ever seen that had me literally howling with laughter. And I can't watch it now without giggling and chuckling and laughing. It's one of the best ever comedy skits I've ever seen. But if you Google or go onto YouTube and do Rod Gilbert, and it's Rod, R-H-O-D, Gilbert, G-I-L-B-E-R-T, Rod Gilbert, jacket potatoes, or Tesco Express. I can't even. I'm so sorry, I can't even think about it. But please, if you do get a chance, and I'm gonna have to stop for a minute. Oh, please excuse the brief intermission there. I was having a bit of a moment. But please, if you ever want a little bit of a pick-me-up or a little bit of a chuckle, don't take my word for it. Just check it out sometime. Hey, what a legend. So, my lovely beans. Okay, so we are on Monday. I'm hopefully going to do a bit of a live later on today, maybe tomorrow. The times are going to fluctuate. Just I'll try and do a little heads up beforehand. I might do a little community post or something. No promises or anything. But we're going to be doing Paddington at Christmas. We're going to be doing... This is prior to Christmas Day, but bear in mind, we're going to be doing Paddington's Christmas present. I don't know whether to do that as a recording that people can just listen to any time. Rather than do it as a live, because I want the lives to be kind of like snappy and high energy and, you know, just fun. Hopefully, we'll try and make Grimm's fairy tales and the Christmas stories I've had in Christian Andersen fun. Bring them into the modern day. Oh, that's going to be so much fun to do. Yes. I'm going to have to do some graphics fun as well. Actually, I haven't done them. I need to get my act together. I mean, I've done Christmas backgrounds for StreamYard, which I use to like do lives through onto YouTube and everything. But oh my crikey, I need to think, I should do it on my Substack as well. Anyway, got off on a bit of a tangent there, but if you're busy doing Christmas stuff, just please stay safe. Watch out for those people out there who are a bit crazy and who've been out at Christmas parties and haven't slept it all off before they've gone out driving. So, if you're cold, wrap up warm. If you're too hot, make sure to hydrate. But as I said, most of all, stay safe. I want to see the other side of the holidays and into New Year, if you don't mind very much. Thank you. But please, let me know how you're doing. Let me know you're okay and you're doing all right. And if you do want to make contact or touch base, if it is a bit tough, you know, either... You're more than welcome to touch base, talk to a family member, talk to friends, you know, even if you're calling helpline, you're not alone. We're out here. We're out here the whole of the Christmas period. So a bit serious there, I know, but that's because it's important, because it is a really tough time of year, as it can be tough all year round for people. But I know full well this time can be a lot more difficult. So as I said, we're in this together. We're here to support each other. I don't want to sound self-righteous or anything, but no matter what, as the wonderful Jake Barr says, you're not allowed to quit. You're not allowed to check out. Let us know if you're having a difficult time. If you don't want to talk to us, talk to a helpline, talk to like there's lots of groups out there, there's lots of therapists out there, and the best thing about talking to a therapist is that it is absolutely confidential and you're anonymous. You know, they look after your heart and soul and your head. They don't know you as a person. That's the thing. Anyway, okay, we're going to lift this up and we're going to get into the Christmas spirit. We're just going to enjoy the festivities. Woo! It's going to be awesome. So, as I said, I'm going to try and get on and do as many lives as possible and read lots of stories and just chitter-chatter. And yes, and thank you for tolerating me. If you want to hit that notifications bell, do the like and subscribe. If you enjoy the channel, if you can leave a like, that's always appreciated. And don't forget, let me know your funny Christmas stories if you've had any so far of the chaos that's out there right now. But as I said, stay safe, and no matter what, if you need to reach out, reach out. Big love. Take care, Petal.